The morning mist clung to the Cascade Mountains like a shroud, obscuring the jagged peaks that had claimed 3 climbers somewhere in their frozen embrace. At the base of Mount Rainier's northern face, the Washington State Search and Rescue Headquarters buzzed with the controlled chaos of an emergency response operation. Radio chatter filled the air. Maps covered every available surface, and seasoned rescue veterans moved with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had seen too many of these situations end badly. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Elena Martinez stood at the periphery of the main briefing area, her rescue pack meticulously organized beside her. Every piece of equipment checked and double-checked, according to protocols she had memorized years ago. Her uniform bore no special commendations, no patches indicating years of heroic rescues or dangerous mountain recoveries. The fabric was clean but unremarkable, telling the story of someone who prepared thoroughly but rarely got the chance to prove herself when it truly mattered. Around her, the veteran rescue team members exchanged stories and theories with the easy familiarity of people who had worked together through countless emergencies. Their voices carried the confidence that came from experience, from successful missions that had brought people home alive, from situations that seemed impossible. They spoke in shorthand, using references to previous rescues, and inside knowledge that marked them as the inner circle of mountain rescue operations. Captain Derek Hartwell commanded the room with his presence, his weathered face bearing the scars of 2 decades spent pulling people off dangerous mountain faces. His uniform displayed a collection of service ribbons and rescue citations that told the story of a career built on bold decisions and successful outcomes. Beside him, Lieutenant Sarah Chen traced potential routes on a topographical map, her finger following ridge lines and valley approaches with the confidence of someone who knew these mountains intimately. The missing climbers had been overdue for 36 hours. 3 experienced mountaineers who had planned a technical ascent of the mountain's most challenging route, a path that required advanced climbing skills and perfect weather conditions. The forecast had turned against them sometime during their second day, bringing the kind of sudden storm that could transform a manageable climb into a deadly trap within hours. Lena listened carefully as the team leaders discussed their options. The standard rescue protocols called for helicopter reconnaissance, followed by ground teams approaching from established base camps. It was a methodical approach that had worked successfully in previous operations, relying on proven techniques and established communication networks. The rescue veterans nodded in agreement as Captain Hartwell outlined the mission parameters, their expressions reflecting confidence in procedures that had brought them success before. When the floor opened for input from team members, Elena cleared her throat and stepped forward slightly. The movement seemed to surprise some of the veterans, as if they had forgotten she was present in the room. She had studied the weather data extensively during the night, cross-referencing wind patterns with topographical features and analyzing how the storm system would affect different approach routes. The weather pattern suggests the eastern ridge approach might be compromised by wind shear, she said, her voice steady and professional. The meteorological data shows sustained winds above 40 miles per hour in that corridor, with gusts potentially reaching 60. I would recommend considering the northwestern drainage as an alternative approach vector. The room did not fall silent, but conversations quieted noticeably. A few team leaders glanced in her direction with expressions that ranged from polite attention to barely concealed skepticism. Elena had spent considerable time analyzing historical weather patterns for this particular mountain face, studying how storm systems interacted with the unique geological features of the region. Her assessment was based on careful analysis of multiple data sources, not just the standard weather reports that everyone else was using. Technical specialist Mike Rodriguez, stationed near the equipment table, exchanged a glance with his partner and made a comment under his breath about weather forecasters who had never actually climbed in a real storm. His words carried just loud enough for several team members to hear, drawing a few quiet chuckles from veterans who preferred to trust their field experience over theoretical analysis. Captain Hartwell consulted his tablet briefly, then looked up with an expression that was professional but dismissive. "We have solid intel on the eastern approach, Martinez. The helicopter reconnaissance confirmed that route is viable. We stick with the established protocol." His tone was not unkind, but it carried the weight of command authority and the implicit message that the discussion was closed. The kind of response that acknowledged her input, while making it clear that her analysis was not considered as valuable as the field experience and established procedures that had guided the team through previous successful missions. Elena nodded once and stepped back into her position at the edge of the group. Around her, the briefing continued as if her intervention had never occurred. The team leaders returned to their discussion of logistics and timing, their voices carrying the easy confidence of professionals who trusted their methods and their equipment. No one asked follow-up questions about her weather analysis or requested additional details about the alternative approach she had suggested. The mission assignments were distributed with the same casual efficiency that marked all aspects of the team's operations. Experienced team leaders were paired with specific rescue specialists, helicopter pilots were briefed on flight patterns and landing zones, and communication protocols were established for maintaining contact between ground teams and base operations. Elena waited as names were called and responsibilities assigned, her own role becoming clear through omission rather than explicit instruction. Support Team Alpha, Martinez. Base Camp Coordination and Equipment Monitoring. The assignment came without eye contact or elaboration, delivered as part of a rapid-fire list of secondary responsibilities that kept the operation running but did not involve direct participation in the actual rescue effort. It was the kind of role typically assigned to newer team members, or those whose skills were considered valuable but not essential for the primary mission. Around her, the veteran rescuers were gathering their gear and discussing approach strategies with the focused intensity of people preparing for dangerous work. Their conversations were filled with references to previous rescues and shared experiences that reinforced their status as the core team members who would be counted on when conditions became challenging. Elena organized her equipment with the same methodical care she applied to every aspect of her preparation, even though her role would keep her at base camp rather than on the mountain face where the real rescue work would take place. The weather monitoring equipment she had requested was approved without discussion, a decision that seemed to reflect the team's willingness to accommodate her technical interests as long as they did not interfere with established operational procedures. She had argued for more comprehensive atmospheric monitoring capabilities, suggesting that real-time weather data could provide crucial information for rescue teams operating in rapidly changing conditions. Outside the headquarters building, the morning sun was beginning to burn through the mountain mist, revealing glimpses of the treacherous terrain where 3 people were waiting for rescue. The parking area filled with the controlled activity of a major rescue operation as team members loaded vehicles with specialized equipment and conducted final equipment checks. Helicopter rotors were beginning to spin up in the distance, their distinctive sound mixing with the voices of rescue personnel and the static-filled chatter of radio communications. Elena walked toward the equipment truck assigned to the support team, her pack securely fastened and her weather monitoring gear carefully protected in weatherproof cases. She had been part of this organization for 3 years, participating in training exercises and supporting numerous rescue operations, but always in auxiliary roles that kept her away from the most dangerous and critical aspects of mountain rescue work. Her academic background in meteorology and her extensive study of mountain weather patterns had earned her a place on the team, but not the kind of respect that came with successful field rescues or demonstrated competence under extreme conditions. She was valued for her technical knowledge and her meticulous preparation, but not trusted with the kind of life-or-death decisions that define the careers of veteran rescue specialists. The drive to the mountain base camp took nearly 2 hours, winding through forest roads that gradually climbed toward the tree line where the rescue operation would establish its forward command post. Elena rode in the support vehicle, listening to radio communications between the helicopter reconnaissance team and the ground-based rescue coordinators. The reports were consistent with the weather analysis she had prepared, but they also confirmed that the standard approach routes remained viable according to current field observations. At base camp, she established the weather monitoring station with the same methodical precision that characterized all of her work. The equipment was more sophisticated than the standard instruments typically used for rescue operations, capable of tracking micro-weather patterns and atmospheric changes that could affect climbing conditions on specific sections of the mountain face. She had requisitioned the additional monitoring capabilities specifically for operations like this one, where weather conditions could change rapidly and unpredictably. The data streams began flowing immediately, painting a picture of atmospheric conditions that was more complex and concerning than the standard weather reports suggested. Wind patterns were showing significant variability at different elevations, with strong updrafts and downdrafts creating turbulent air masses that could affect both helicopter operations and climbing safety. The temperature differential between different sections of the mountain face was creating micro-weather systems that did not appear in regional forecasts. Elena documented her observations in detailed reports that she transmitted to the Rescue Coordination Center, hoping that the information might prove useful for teams operating on the mountain. Her analysis suggested that weather conditions were likely to deteriorate more rapidly than anticipated, with the potential for sudden visibility changes and dangerous wind conditions that could affect both rescue operations and the safety of the missing climbers. The response to her reports was polite but minimal. Basecamp Communications acknowledged receipt of her weather data and filed it with other operational information, but there was no indication that the analysis was influencing tactical decisions or rescue planning. The helicopter crews continued their reconnaissance flights according to established schedules, and ground teams prepared their approach routes based on standard protocols rather than the detailed micro-weather analysis she was providing. As the day progressed, Elena watched the atmospheric data with growing concern. The weather patterns she was tracking suggested that conditions on the mountain were becoming increasingly unstable, with the potential for sudden changes that could trap rescue teams or create additional emergency situations. Her monitoring equipment was detecting wind shear patterns and temperature inversions that could affect helicopter operations and make climbing conditions extremely dangerous. She attempted to communicate her concerns through the established chain of command, transmitting detailed weather updates and recommendations for modified approach strategies. Her reports included specific warnings about wind conditions in the eastern approach corridor and suggestions for alternative timing that could avoid the worst of the predicted weather deterioration. The information was comprehensive, technically accurate, and based on real-time atmospheric monitoring that was not available to other team members. The feedback she received was consistently professional but dismissive. Field teams reported that current conditions remained within acceptable parameters for rescue operations, and helicopter pilots confirmed that visibility and wind conditions were manageable for planned reconnaissance and support activities. Her weather analysis was noted and filed, but it did not result in any modifications to rescue protocols or operational procedures. By late afternoon, the rescue operation had established contact with the missing climbers through emergency radio communications. The three mountaineers were alive but in serious trouble, trapped on a narrow ledge system approximately 2/3 of the way up the mountain face. They had been forced to abandon their planned route when weather conditions deteriorated, and they were now in a position that was extremely difficult to reach using standard rescue techniques. The news electrified the base camp as rescue coordinators began planning the technical extraction that would be required to reach the stranded climbers. The operation would require helicopter support for personnel insertion, followed by complex rope rescue techniques to evacuate the climbers from their precarious position. It was exactly the kind of challenging rescue that the veteran team members had trained for, the type of mission that separated experienced mountain rescuers from support personnel. Elena monitored the planning discussions through radio communications while continuing to track atmospheric conditions that were showing increasing signs of instability. Her weather data indicated that the rescue window was narrowing more rapidly than anyone realized, with severe weather moving toward the mountain faster than regional forecasts predicted. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The micro-weather patterns she was tracking suggested that conditions could become extremely dangerous for helicopter operations within hours, rather than the day or more that standard forecasts suggested. She prepared another detailed weather report. This one focused specifically on the timing constraints that her data suggested for helicopter operations and technical rescue work at altitude. The analysis included specific recommendations for accelerating the rescue timeline and warnings about atmospheric conditions that could make the operation impossible if delayed beyond a certain point. Her report was thorough, urgent, and based on atmospheric monitoring that was providing real-time data about conditions that could not be assessed through visual observation alone. The response was the same pattern of polite acknowledgement, followed by operational decisions that seemed to disregard her analysis entirely. Rescue coordinators continued planning based on standard weather forecasts and field observations, confident that their experience and established procedures would guide them through whatever conditions they encountered. Elena's technical analysis was filed with other operational information, but it did not influence the critical decisions that would determine the success or failure of the rescue mission. As evening approached, Elena found herself in the familiar position of being right about technical details while being wrong about their practical importance. Her weather monitoring was providing accurate and detailed information about atmospheric conditions, but that information was not considered as valuable as the field experience and visual observations of veteran rescue team members. She was the support specialist who provided useful technical services, but not the decision-maker whose analysis would influence life-or-death operational choices. The rescue teams prepared for what would likely be an all-night operation, with plans to establish advanced positions on the mountain during the evening hours and complete the technical extraction of the stranded climbers during the early morning hours, when weather conditions were expected to be most stable. It was a reasonable plan based on standard weather forecasts and established rescue protocols, the kind of methodical approach that had succeeded in previous operations under similar circumstances. Elena packed her weather monitoring equipment for potential deployment to advanced positions, knowing that her role would likely remain limited to providing technical support rather than participating directly in the rescue operation. She had spent years preparing for opportunities to contribute directly to mountain rescue operations, studying weather patterns and atmospheric conditions with the same intensity that other team members devoted to climbing techniques and emergency medical procedures. Tonight would test whether her preparation and technical knowledge could contribute to something more significant than equipment monitoring and base camp coordination. The 3 stranded climbers were counting on the rescue team's ability to reach them before weather conditions made evacuation impossible, and Elena's atmospheric monitoring suggested that the rescue window was much shorter than anyone else realized. The emergency radio crackled to life at 3:17 a.m., cutting through the relative quiet of base camp with the kind of urgent transmission that every rescue coordinator dreaded. Elena Martinez was monitoring weather data streams on her laptop when the call came through, the sound jolting her to full alertness as she recognized the stress in the helicopter pilot's voice cutting through static and wind noise. "Base camp, this is Rescue 7. We have a problem up here. Weather conditions have deteriorated beyond forecast parameters. Visibility is near zero, and we're experiencing severe turbulence and wind shear, unable to maintain stable position for rescue operations. Request immediate guidance on abort procedures." The transmission sent a wave of tension through the base camp coordination center as team leaders scrambled to assess the situation and determine their options. Captain Hartwell moved quickly to the radio equipment, his expression reflecting the kind of focused concern that came with years of experience managing dangerous rescue operations. The helicopter crew had been attempting to establish advanced positions for the technical rescue teams when the weather deteriorated more rapidly and severely than anyone had anticipated. Elena's weather monitoring equipment had been tracking the atmospheric conditions that were now threatening the rescue operation. Her data streams showed exactly what the helicopter pilot was experiencing: severe wind shear patterns and rapidly changing visibility conditions that made helicopter operations extremely dangerous. More concerning, her analysis indicated that the weather deterioration was likely to continue and intensify rather than improving, as the standard forecasts had predicted. Rescue 7, this is Base Camp Command. Abort current positioning attempts and return to base camp immediately. Weather conditions appear to be temporary. We will reassess for continuation of operations once conditions stabilize. The response reflected standard emergency protocols for helicopter operations in deteriorating weather conditions. When visibility and wind conditions became dangerous, the established procedure was to abort the mission temporarily and wait for conditions to improve. It was a reasonable approach based on typical weather patterns and the assumption that the current conditions represented a temporary setback rather than a fundamental change in the rescue environment. Elena studied her weather monitoring data with growing alarm. The atmospheric patterns she was tracking suggested that the current weather deterioration was not temporary, but rather the beginning of a more severe and sustained storm system that could make helicopter operations impossible for an extended period. Her analysis indicated that rescue teams had perhaps hours rather than days before weather conditions would make any approach to the stranded climbers extremely dangerous or impossible. She prepared an emergency weather assessment report documenting the atmospheric conditions that her monitoring equipment was detecting and providing specific predictions about how weather patterns were likely to develop over the next 12 to 24 hours. Her analysis was detailed, urgent, and based on real-time atmospheric data that painted a much more concerning picture than standard weather forecasts suggested. The report included specific recommendations for modifying rescue operations to account for the rapidly changing weather conditions, including suggestions for alternative approach routes that might remain viable even if helicopter operations became impossible. Elena had studied the topographical features of the mountain extensively, and she believed there were ground-based approach options that could reach the stranded climbers even under severe weather conditions. Base Camp Command, this is Martinez at Weather Monitoring Station. Emergency atmospheric analysis indicates severe weather system intensifying rather than temporary conditions. Recommend immediate ground-based rescue operations before weather window closes completely. Detailed analysis and alternative approach recommendations attached to this transmission. The response came quickly, but it carried the same tone of polite dismissal that had characterized previous interactions with her weather analysis. Base Camp acknowledged receipt of her report and confirmed that her information would be considered as part of ongoing operational planning. However, there was no indication that her analysis was influencing immediate decisions about rescue operations or approach strategies. Meanwhile, the helicopter crew was struggling to return safely to base camp as weather conditions continued to deteriorate around them. Radio communications became increasingly difficult as wind noise and interference affected transmission quality, and the pilot reported that navigation was becoming challenging due to rapidly changing visibility conditions. The situation was developing into exactly the kind of emergency that Elena's weather monitoring had been designed to help prevent. Rescue 7 to base camp. Navigation systems showing anomalous readings. Visibility is fluctuating between 50 feet and complete whiteout conditions. Request ground-based navigation assistance and emergency beacon activation for approach guidance. The transmission carried the controlled tension of professional pilots dealing with dangerous conditions, but Elena could hear the underlying concern that came with flying in weather that was pushing the boundaries of safe helicopter operations. Her monitoring equipment was tracking the same atmospheric disturbances that were affecting the aircraft, severe turbulence patterns and visibility changes that made flight operations extremely hazardous. Captain Hartwell coordinated the emergency response with the practiced efficiency of someone who had managed similar situations before, activating ground-based navigation beacons and establishing radio guidance protocols to help the helicopter crew navigate safely back to base camp. The procedures were standard emergency protocols designed to provide assistance for aircraft operating in challenging weather conditions. Elena continued monitoring atmospheric conditions while the helicopter emergency unfolded, watching data streams that showed the weather system intensifying exactly as her analysis had predicted. The patterns she was tracking indicated that the current conditions were likely to persist and worsen, making any further helicopter operations impossible for an extended period. More critically, the same weather system that was threatening the rescue helicopter was also creating increasingly dangerous conditions for the 3 stranded climbers. The helicopter managed to return safely to base camp after nearly an hour of dangerous flying through deteriorating weather conditions. The crew reported that visibility had been near zero for extended periods, with wind conditions that made stable flight extremely difficult. Their experience confirmed what Elena's weather monitoring had been indicating, that atmospheric conditions on the mountain were much more severe and unstable than standard weather forecasts had suggested. With helicopter operations suspended indefinitely due to weather conditions, the rescue coordinators began reassessing their options for reaching the stranded climbers. The standard approach protocols had been built around helicopter support for personnel insertion and evacuation, and the loss of aerial capabilities significantly complicated rescue planning. The team leaders gathered around topographical maps, discussing alternative approaches that could be attempted using ground-based techniques. Elena approached the planning group with her detailed analysis of alternative approach routes, hoping that the current emergency might create an opportunity for her technical knowledge to contribute more directly to rescue operations. Her study of the mountain's topographical features had identified several potential ground-based approaches that could reach the area where the climbers were stranded, routes that did not depend on helicopter support and might remain viable even under severe weather conditions. Captain Hartwell, I have detailed analysis of ground-based approach options that could reach the stranded climbers without helicopter support. The northwestern drainage route could provide access to their position using established climbing techniques, and my weather monitoring suggests that conditions in that corridor might remain stable enough for rescue operations. Her reports were acknowledged and filed with other operational information, but they did not result in modifications to rescue planning or operational procedures. The team coordinators continued working within established protocols, planning approaches that depended on weather conditions improving enough to allow helicopter operations to resume. Elena's alternative approach suggestions were noted but not seriously considered as viable options for rescue operations. By dawn, the situation had evolved into exactly the kind of emergency that Elena's weather analysis had predicted. Weather conditions had not improved, as standard forecasts suggested, but had instead intensified into a severe storm system that made helicopter operations impossible and threatened to make any rescue attempt extremely dangerous. Radio contact with the stranded climbers had been lost completely, leaving rescue coordinators without current information about their condition or immediate needs. The Base Camp Coordination Center buzzed with the controlled urgency of professionals dealing with a rescue operation that was rapidly becoming a race against time. Weather reports indicated that the storm system was likely to persist for at least another 24 hours, possibly longer, and the stranded climbers had now been exposed to severe conditions for more than 48 hours without adequate shelter or supplies. Elena's weather monitoring continued to provide detailed information about atmospheric conditions, confirming that her predictions about weather deterioration had been accurate and suggesting that the rescue window was continuing to narrow. Her data indicated that certain approach routes might remain viable for ground-based operations, even though helicopter support would be impossible until weather conditions improved significantly. Captain Hartwell gathered the available rescue team members for an emergency briefing to reassess their options and determine whether any rescue attempt could be made under current conditions. The discussion was somber, reflecting the reality that they were facing an extremely dangerous situation with limited options and rapidly deteriorating conditions. Elena listened from her position at the weather monitoring station, hoping that the emergency might finally create an opportunity for her technical analysis to influence rescue operations. The team's options had been reduced to a single possibility: attempting a ground-based rescue using climbing techniques and manual evacuation procedures that would be extremely dangerous under current weather conditions. It was the kind of high-risk operation that experienced rescue professionals attempted only when no other alternatives existed, when the certainty of death from inaction outweighed the significant risks associated with emergency rescue procedures. Elena realized that this was the moment she had been preparing for throughout her years of study and technical preparation. Her weather analysis and alternative approach recommendations represented knowledge that could potentially make the difference between a successful rescue and a tragedy that would claim additional lives. The question was whether her technical expertise would finally be recognized as valuable enough to influence the life-or-death decisions that needed to be made immediately. The morning briefing would determine whether Elena Martinez remained a support specialist providing technical services from base camp, or whether she would finally have the opportunity to prove that her methodical preparation and detailed knowledge could contribute directly to saving lives under the most challenging conditions imaginable. The emergency briefing convened at 0630 hours in the main coordination tent, with every available team member crowded around the central table covered in topographical maps and weather reports. The atmosphere was heavy with the kind of professional tension that emerged when experienced rescue specialists faced a situation that challenged their standard operating procedures. Captain Hartwell stood at the head of the table, his weathered face reflecting the weight of command decisions that could determine whether 3 people lived or died. Elena remained at her weather monitoring station, but she positioned herself where she could observe the briefing discussions while continuing to track atmospheric conditions that were showing no signs of improvement. Her equipment displays painted a stark picture of sustained severe weather that contradicted every optimistic scenario the rescue coordinators were hoping to find. The data streams confirmed what she had been predicting for hours, that helicopter operations would remain impossible and that ground-based rescue attempts faced increasingly dangerous conditions. The team leaders reviewed their available options with the methodical thoroughness of professionals who understood that overlooked details could prove fatal under emergency conditions. Lieutenant Chen presented the standard protocols for ground-based rescue operations, outlining equipment requirements and personnel assignments for technical climbing rescues that did not depend on helicopter support. Her presentation was comprehensive and professional, but it also made clear that attempting rescue operations under current weather conditions would push every safety parameter beyond recommended limits. Technical specialist Rodriguez provided updates on equipment availability and logistics support for extended rescue operations in severe weather conditions. The team possessed the technical climbing gear and emergency medical supplies necessary for complex mountain rescues, but the weather conditions threatened to make transportation and deployment of that equipment extremely difficult. His analysis suggested that rescue teams would be operating at the limits of their capabilities, with minimal safety margins and reduced options for emergency evacuation if additional problems developed. Sergeant Williams reported on communication status and coordination protocols with regional emergency services and military support units. The communication infrastructure was functioning adequately, despite weather interference, but the severity of current conditions had effectively isolated the rescue operation from external support. Helicopter assistance would be unavailable until weather conditions improved significantly, and ground-based reinforcement would be extremely difficult due to road conditions and transportation challenges. Elena listened to the briefing discussions while studying her weather data with growing urgency. The atmospheric patterns she was tracking suggested that the rescue teams were facing a narrowing window of opportunity that was closing more rapidly than anyone else realized. Her monitoring equipment was detecting atmospheric pressure changes and wind pattern shifts that indicated the current storm system was not only persisting but intensifying in ways that would make any rescue attempt increasingly dangerous. She had prepared detailed analysis of alternative approach routes that could potentially reach the stranded climbers using ground-based techniques, routes that took advantage of topographical features and geological formations that might provide some protection from the worst weather conditions. Her study of the mountain structure had identified several possible paths that had not been evaluated in previous rescue operations, approaches that might remain viable even when standard routes became too dangerous to attempt. The briefing discussion reached the critical decision point where theoretical planning had to transform into actual operational commitments. Captain Hartwell surveyed the assembled team members, his expression reflecting the burden of leadership in situations where every available option carried significant risks and uncertain outcomes. The standard rescue protocols provided guidance for operations under challenging conditions, but the current situation was pushing beyond the parameters that those procedures were designed to address. Elena made her decision in that moment, choosing to step forward from her monitoring station and approach the briefing table with her detailed analysis and alternative recommendations. The movement attracted attention from team members who had grown accustomed to her remaining in the background during operational discussions. Her weather monitoring equipment continued displaying data streams that supported her analysis, but she carried her written reports and annotated topographical maps as physical evidence of the preparation she had invested in understanding this mountain. "Captain Hartwell," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the tent despite the wind noise from outside. "My weather monitoring indicates that current conditions will not improve within the time frame we need for standard rescue approaches. However, I have identified alternative ground-based routes that could reach the stranded climbers using approaches that minimize exposure to the worst weather conditions." The interruption created a moment of silence as the veteran rescue team members processed her intervention. Elena was known for providing technical support and weather analysis, but she had never before inserted herself directly into operational planning discussions or challenged the team's strategic decision-making process. Her weather reports had been valuable but peripheral to the core rescue activities that defined successful mountain rescue operations. She spread her annotated topographical maps across the briefing table, revealing detailed route analysis and timing calculations that represented months of study and preparation. The maps showed alternative approach paths that utilized natural terrain features to provide protection from wind and weather, routes that could potentially reach the climber's position without depending on helicopter support or exposure to the most dangerous sections of the mountain face. The northwestern drainage system provides a protected approach corridor that extends to within 500 meters of the stranded climber's last known position. The route involves technical climbing sections, but the rock formations provide natural wind breaks, and the approach angle minimizes avalanche risk according to current snow conditions and terrain analysis. Lieutenant Chen studied the proposed route with the practiced eye of someone who had planned numerous technical rescues, her expression reflecting professional skepticism, tempered by recognition that Elena's analysis was more detailed and comprehensive than typical weather support reports. The route Elena had identified was unfamiliar and untested, but it represented a potential approach path that had not been considered in previous planning discussions. "Martinez," Chen said, her tone maintaining professional courtesy while expressing underlying concern. "This approach involves sections that we have not evaluated for rescue operations. The technical climbing requirements could create additional risks for rescue teams, particularly under current weather conditions." Elena had anticipated this objection and prepared detailed responses based on her extensive study of the mountain's geological features and climbing characteristics. Her analysis included specific assessments of rock quality, weather exposure, and technical difficulty ratings for each section of the proposed route. She had cross-referenced her topographical analysis with historical climbing reports and geological surveys to develop a comprehensive understanding of the approach challenges and requirements. I have detailed technical analysis of each climbing section, including rock quality assessments and weather exposure evaluations. The route includes 3 technical pitches that are within the skill range of our advanced team members, and the overall approach minimizes exposure time compared to standard approaches under current weather conditions. Captain Hartwell examined the route analysis with the careful attention of someone who understood that operational decisions in emergency situations required balancing innovative approaches against established safety protocols. Elena's proposed route was creative and technically sound, but it represented a significant departure from proven rescue techniques that had succeeded in previous operations. The discussion that followed revealed the fundamental tension between innovative problem-solving and operational conservatism that characterized emergency rescue operations. Elena's alternative approach offered potential solutions to problems that had made standard rescue techniques impossible, but it also introduced unknown variables and untested procedures that could create additional dangers for rescue team members. Sergeant Williams raised concerns about communication protocols and evacuation procedures for rescue teams operating on unfamiliar routes without helicopter support. The proposed approach would take rescue teams into sections of the mountain where communication might be difficult and where emergency evacuation would depend entirely on the same route used for the initial approach. Elena addressed each concern with detailed analysis and specific solutions based on her comprehensive study of the mountain's features and rescue requirements. Her preparation had included communication dead zones, emergency evacuation routes, and contingency procedures for various scenarios that might develop during rescue operations. She had invested significant time and effort in understanding not just the weather patterns that affected the mountain, but the complete operational environment that rescue teams would encounter. The technical discussion continued for nearly 30 minutes as team members evaluated Elena's proposed approach against standard procedures and safety requirements. Her analysis was thorough and professionally presented, but it also represented a level of detailed preparation that surprised veteran team members who had not previously recognized the depth of her technical knowledge and operational understanding. Technical specialist Rodriguez emerged as an unexpected supporter of Elena's alternative approach, recognizing that her route analysis addressed several logistical challenges that had been complicating standard rescue planning. Her proposed path offered better equipment transportation options and more secure anchor points for technical climbing operations than the approaches that had been under consideration. The weather monitoring data that Elena continued to track throughout the discussion provided additional support for her recommendations. Her atmospheric analysis showed that weather conditions along her proposed route would be more stable and predictable than conditions affecting the standard approach paths. The topographical features that she had identified as providing protection from wind and weather were confirmed by real-time monitoring data that showed reduced turbulence and improved visibility in the northwestern drainage corridor. Captain Hartwell reached his decision after consulting with each team leader and reviewing the available alternatives against the operational requirements and safety considerations that governed rescue operations. The situation had evolved beyond the parameters of standard rescue protocols, and Elena's alternative approach represented the most viable option for reaching the stranded climbers under current conditions. "Martinez," he said, his voice carrying the formal tone that marked important operational decisions. "Your route analysis appears sound, and your weather monitoring supports the feasibility of the northwestern approach. However, attempting this rescue will require technical leadership from someone who understands both the route requirements and the weather conditions that will affect the operation." Elena felt the weight of implication in his words before he made his decision explicit. The team needed someone who combined technical climbing skills with detailed knowledge of the alternative approach and comprehensive understanding of weather conditions that would affect rescue operations. Her months of preparation and detailed analysis had positioned her as the logical choice for leading the rescue attempt, despite her limited experience in direct rescue operations. "I am assigning you as technical lead for this rescue operation, with responsibility for route selection, weather assessment, and coordination of climbing activities. Lieutenant Chen will serve as operational second with authority for personnel safety and evacuation procedures. This will be a joint leadership approach that combines your technical knowledge with established operational experience." The assignment represented a dramatic departure from Elena's previous support role, and a significant recognition of the value that her technical preparation and detailed knowledge could contribute to rescue operations. However, It also placed her in a position of direct responsibility for life-or-death decisions that would determine the success or failure of the rescue attempt. The team members who had previously dismissed her weather reports and technical analysis were now looking to her for leadership in the most challenging rescue operation they had attempted. The quiet support specialist who had spent years providing background technical services was suddenly being asked to lead a dangerous mission that would test every aspect of her preparation and knowledge. Elena accepted the assignment with the same calm professionalism that had characterized her technical work, but internally she felt the weight of responsibility that came with leading rescue operations where mistakes could prove fatal. Her extensive preparation had given her confidence in her technical analysis and route planning, but actual rescue leadership would require skills and decisions that extended beyond weather monitoring and topographical study. The rescue team immediately began preparations for the alternative approach, with Elena providing detailed briefings on route requirements, weather considerations, and technical challenges that team members would encounter. Her analysis became the foundation for equipment selection, personnel assignments, and operational timing that would guide every aspect of the rescue attempt. Lieutenant Chen coordinated personnel assignments and safety protocols, ensuring that team members possessed the technical climbing skills and emergency response capabilities required for the alternative approach. The rescue would require advanced rope techniques, technical rock climbing abilities, and the physical conditioning necessary for extended operations under severe weather conditions. Technical specialist Rodriguez managed equipment preparation and logistics support, organizing the specialized gear and emergency supplies that would be required for technical rescue operations in challenging weather conditions. The equipment load had to balance comprehensive rescue capabilities against the weight and transportation constraints of the alternative approach route. Elena spent the final preparation time reviewing her weather monitoring data and updating her analysis of conditions that rescue teams would encounter during the operation. Her atmospheric monitoring continued to support the feasibility of the northwestern approach, but it also indicated that the rescue window remained limited and that weather conditions could deteriorate further if the operation extended beyond planned timeframes. The rescue team departed base camp at 0830 hours, carrying equipment and supplies for what could become an extended operation under severe weather conditions. Elena led the group along the initial sections of the northwestern approach, following terrain features that she had studied extensively but never actually traversed under operational conditions. Her theoretical knowledge was being tested against the reality of mountain rescue operations, where theoretical analysis had to transform into practical navigation and leadership decisions. The early sections of the alternative route confirmed Elena's analysis, providing protected corridors that offered some relief from the severe wind conditions that were making other approaches impossible. The topographical features that she had identified on maps proved to provide actual windbreaks and navigation references that allowed the rescue team to make progress despite challenging weather conditions. However, the reality of leading a rescue operation quickly revealed complexities that had not been apparent in her theoretical analysis. Team members required constant communication and coordination, equipment needed continuous monitoring and adjustment, and route decisions had to be evaluated and modified based on real-time conditions that were more variable and challenging than her planning had anticipated. Lieutenant Chen provided essential operational support, managing team safety protocols and communication procedures that kept the rescue effort coordinated and focused on operational objectives. Her experience with rescue team leadership complemented Elena's technical knowledge, creating a partnership that combined innovative route planning with established operational procedures. The first technical climbing section arrived after 2 hours of approach hiking, presenting the team with rock formations and weather conditions that tested both Elena's route analysis and the team's technical capabilities. The climbing was within the skill range that Elena had calculated, but weather conditions made every movement more difficult and dangerous than normal climbing operations. Elena found herself making real-time decisions about route modifications and safety procedures based on conditions that differed from her theoretical analysis in subtle but significant ways. The rock quality was as she had predicted, but wind conditions created challenges that required constant adaptation and modified techniques. Her weather monitoring had been accurate about general conditions, but the specific microenvironments encountered during actual climbing presented variables that had not been apparent in her preparation. The rescue team adapted to Elena's leadership style, which emphasized careful analysis and thorough communication, rather than the intuitive decision-making that often characterized experienced rescue operations. Her approach was methodical and systematic, ensuring that every team member understood route requirements and safety procedures before attempting challenging sections. By midday, the rescue team had navigated the most difficult technical sections of Elena's alternative route and was approaching the area where the stranded climbers had last been located. Her weather monitoring continued to support the operation, showing that conditions along the northwestern approach remained more stable than weather affecting other sections of the mountain. However, the success of the alternative route approach was only the first phase of what would prove to be an increasingly complex rescue operation. Reaching the stranded climbers would require locating them in challenging terrain under poor visibility conditions, assessing their medical condition and evacuation requirements, and then executing a technical evacuation that would test every aspect of the rescue team's capabilities and Elena's leadership abilities. The radio crackled with weak transmissions as the rescue team attempted to establish contact with the stranded climbers, hoping to confirm their location and condition before attempting the final approach to their position. Elena coordinated communication attempts while continuing to monitor weather conditions that would affect both the location phase of the rescue and the evacuation procedures that would follow. Team leader to base camp, this is Rescue Team Alpha. We have successfully navigated the northwestern approach and are beginning location procedures for the stranded climbers. Weather conditions along this route remain stable, confirming alternative approach analysis. Proceeding with final phase operations. The transmission marked a crucial milestone in Elena's transition from support specialist to operational leader. Her alternative route analysis had proven accurate and practical, enabling the rescue team to reach an area that had been inaccessible using standard approaches. However, the most challenging aspects of the rescue operation were still ahead, requiring leadership decisions and technical skills that would determine whether her innovative approach would ultimately succeed in saving lives. Elena Martinez had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, studying weather patterns and mountain features, with the dedication of someone who understood that theoretical knowledge would eventually be tested under conditions where preparation could mean the difference between success and tragedy. The quiet support specialist who had been overlooked and underestimated was now leading a rescue operation that would prove whether meticulous preparation and detailed technical knowledge could overcome the kind of challenges that had defeated more conventional approaches. The northwestern drainage corridor stretched ahead of them, leading toward 3 people who were depending on Elena's leadership and the rescue team's capabilities for their survival. The weather monitoring equipment in her pack continued tracking atmospheric conditions that supported her analysis, but the ultimate test of her preparation was just beginning. The final approach to the stranded climber's position required Elena to navigate through terrain that existed at the absolute limits of her theoretical analysis. Her maps and weather monitoring had brought the rescue team within 500 meters of where the 3 mountaineers had last transmitted their emergency beacon, but the final location phase would depend on real-time assessment of conditions that no amount of preparation could have fully anticipated. The visibility fluctuated between 20 feet in complete whiteout conditions, creating navigation challenges that tested every aspect of her leadership abilities. Elena established a forward communication post behind a rock outcropping that provided some protection from the wind, using the natural terrain features exactly as her route analysis had predicted. Her weather monitoring equipment confirmed that atmospheric conditions in this location were more stable than conditions affecting other sections of the mountain, validating the alternative approach that had enabled them to reach this position when helicopter operations remained impossible. Lieutenant Chen coordinated team positioning and safety protocols, ensuring that rescue personnel remained connected by rope systems and maintained constant communication despite the challenging visibility conditions. The established rescue procedures provided guidance for technical operations under adverse weather, but the current conditions pushed beyond normal operational parameters and required continuous adaptation of standard techniques. The emergency beacon transmissions from the stranded climbers had been intermittent and weak, suggesting that their communication equipment was either damaged or operating at reduced power levels. Elena attempted to establish direct radio contact while directing team members to begin systematic search patterns that could locate the climbers, even if electronic communication remained impossible. This is Rescue Team Alpha calling stranded climbing party. We are approximately 500 meters from your last known position and beginning final approach. If you can hear this transmission, please respond with any available communication method including voice signals, whistle blasts, or visual indicators. The response came faintly through wind noise and static interference, but it was unmistakably human voices calling for help. The sound carried from somewhere to the northwest of their current position, consistent with Elena's analysis of where the climbing party would have sought shelter after being forced to abandon their planned route. The voices were weak but coherent, suggesting that the stranded climbers were conscious and responsive, despite having been exposed to severe weather conditions for more than 50 hours. Elena coordinated the search approach with systematic precision, directing team members to advance in coordinated patterns that would ensure comprehensive coverage of the area while maintaining safety protocols for operations under dangerous visibility conditions. Her methodical approach emphasized thorough communication and careful navigation rather than rapid movement that could create additional emergency situations. Technical specialist Rodriguez located the first visual evidence of the stranded climbers after 20 minutes of systematic searching. Climbing equipment and emergency shelter materials were scattered across a narrow ledge system approximately 60 meters above their current position, indicating that the climbing party had attempted to establish a bivouac site when weather conditions made continued ascent impossible. The ledge system where the climbers had taken shelter was accessible through technical climbing approaches, but it required rope techniques and anchor placements that would be challenging under current weather conditions. Elena assessed the technical requirements against team capabilities and equipment availability, calculating approach options that could reach the stranded climbers while maintaining adequate safety margins for rescue personnel. Lieutenant Chen evaluated evacuation procedures and medical assessment protocols, preparing for the possibility that the stranded climbers might require emergency medical treatment or specialized evacuation techniques. The team carried comprehensive medical supplies and technical rescue equipment, but the weather conditions and terrain challenges would complicate every aspect of treatment and evacuation procedures. Elena began the technical ascent to the climber's position, leading the rope team through rock formations that matched her theoretical analysis but presented practical challenges that required constant adaptation and modified techniques. Her climbing skills were adequate for the technical requirements, but leading a rescue team under emergency conditions demanded leadership abilities and decision-making skills that extended beyond her previous experience. The first stranded climber was located on a narrow ledge approximately 20 meters above the main bivouac site, separated from his companions by rock formations that had become impassable when weather conditions deteriorated. He was conscious and responsive, but showed signs of hypothermia and exhaustion that required immediate medical attention and careful evacuation procedures. Elena established secure anchor points and communication systems that allowed the rescue team to assess all three stranded climbers while coordinating evacuation procedures that could safely transport them from their precarious positions. The technical requirements were complex and demanding, requiring rope techniques and coordination procedures that tested every aspect of the team's training and capabilities. The second climber was found in the main shelter area with a lower leg injury that appeared to be a fracture or severe sprain, complicating evacuation procedures and requiring specialized medical stabilization before transportation could be attempted. The injury was not immediately life-threatening, but it would require careful handling and modified evacuation techniques that accounted for reduced mobility and increased medical monitoring requirements. The third climber was located in the most challenging position, trapped on a small outcropping where falling rocks had created barriers that made direct access extremely difficult. She was conscious and appeared to be in better physical condition than her companions, but her position required complex rope rescue techniques that would push the team's capabilities to their limits. Elena coordinated the multi-phase evacuation with systematic precision, establishing priorities based on medical conditions and evacuation complexity, while maintaining constant monitoring of weather conditions that could affect rescue operations. Her weather analysis continued to support the operation, showing that atmospheric conditions remained stable enough for technical rescue work, but the rescue window was not unlimited, and conditions could deteriorate if the operation extended beyond reasonable timeframes. The evacuation of the first climber proceeded according to established rescue protocols, with Elena directing rope techniques and safety procedures that successfully transported him from his exposed position to a more secure location where medical treatment could be administered. The operation confirmed that her route analysis and team coordination were effective for complex technical rescues under challenging conditions. However, the evacuation of the injured climber presented complications that required innovative solutions beyond standard rescue procedures. His leg injury made normal evacuation techniques impossible, requiring specialized rigging and transportation methods that Elena had studied theoretically but never implemented under operational conditions. The solution required combining established rescue techniques with creative adaptations based on specific terrain features and injury requirements. Elena developed a modified evacuation system that utilized multiple anchor points and specialized rigging to create a stable transportation platform for the injured climber. The technique was based on established principles but required adaptation and modification based on specific terrain conditions and equipment availability. Her theoretical knowledge provided the foundation for the solution, but successful implementation required practical skills and leadership abilities that extended beyond technical analysis. Lieutenant Chen managed medical treatment and patient stabilization procedures, ensuring that the injured climber received appropriate care while evacuation preparations continued. The medical assessment indicated that the leg injury was serious but not immediately life-threatening, provided that evacuation could be completed without additional trauma or complications from transportation procedures. The evacuation of the third climber required the most complex rope rescue techniques, involving multiple rope systems and coordination procedures that demanded precise timing and communication between rescue team members. Elena directed the technical rigging while maintaining constant assessment of weather conditions and operational safety factors that could affect the rescue attempt. The rope rescue proceeded with systematic precision, but it also revealed the extent to which Elena's leadership abilities had developed during the operation. Her initial theoretical knowledge had provided the foundation for reaching the stranded climbers, but successful completion of the rescue required practical decision-making skills and team coordination abilities that she had acquired through real-time operational experience. All 3 stranded climbers were successfully evacuated from their exposed positions and transported to secure locations where comprehensive medical assessment and treatment could be administered. The technical rescue operations had been completed within the weather window that Elena's analysis had predicted, confirming that her alternative approach had provided viable solutions to challenges that had made standard rescue procedures impossible. The return journey to base camp required careful coordination and modified procedures to accommodate the medical needs of the evacuated climbers while navigating terrain and weather conditions that remained challenging. Elena coordinated transportation procedures and route selection while continuing to monitor atmospheric conditions that could affect the evacuation operation. The northwestern drainage route that had enabled the rescue team to reach the stranded climbers also provided protected corridors for evacuation procedures, confirming Elena's analysis of topographical features that offered advantages over standard approach routes. The return journey proceeded according to her route planning, with weather conditions remaining stable enough for safe transportation of the rescued climbers. Technical specialist Rodriguez managed equipment recovery and logistical coordination, ensuring that rescue gear and emergency supplies were properly secured and transported during the evacuation operation. The successful completion of technical rescue procedures under challenging conditions had validated Elena's leadership approach and demonstrated the effectiveness of combining detailed preparation with adaptive operational procedures. Lieutenant Chen coordinated medical monitoring and patient care during the evacuation, maintaining constant assessment of the rescued climber's condition while coordinating with base camp medical personnel, who were preparing for their arrival. The medical evaluation indicated that all 3 climbers would recover fully from their ordeal, provided that they received appropriate treatment for hypothermia, exhaustion, and the leg injury that had complicated evacuation procedures. Elena transmitted regular progress reports to base camp coordination, providing updates on evacuation status and estimated arrival times while confirming that weather conditions continued to support rescue operations. Her reports included detailed analysis of operational procedures and lessons learned that could inform future rescue planning and training programs. Base Camp Command, this is Rescue Team Alpha. All 3 stranded climbers have been successfully evacuated and are being transported to base camp for medical evaluation. Weather conditions along the northwestern approach remain stable. An estimated arrival time is 1,400 hours. Rescue operations have been completed successfully with no additional casualties or emergency situations. The transmission marked the successful conclusion of Elena's transition from support specialist to operational leader, confirming that her alternative approach and technical leadership had achieved results that had seemed impossible using standard rescue procedures. Her detailed preparation, weather analysis, and route planning had provided solutions to challenges that had defeated more conventional approaches to the rescue operation. The arrival at base camp created a dramatic contrast to the morning briefing, where Elena's weather analysis and alternative recommendations had been received with polite skepticism. The successful rescue operation had validated her technical knowledge and demonstrated leadership capabilities that had surprised veteran team members who had not previously recognized the practical value of her methodical approach to mountain rescue operations. Captain Hartwell met the rescue team at the base camp medical facility, his expression reflecting professional satisfaction with operational results that had exceeded expectations under extremely challenging conditions. The successful rescue of all 3 stranded climbers represented a significant achievement for the entire rescue organization, but it also marked a fundamental recognition of Elena's contributions and capabilities. "Martinez," he said, his voice carrying formal acknowledgement of operational leadership that had achieved exceptional results under emergency conditions. "Your alternative approach and technical leadership made this rescue possible when standard procedures had failed. This operation will serve as a model for future rescue planning and training programs." The recognition represented more than professional courtesy or routine acknowledgement of successful operations. Elena's performance had demonstrated that detailed technical preparation and systematic analysis could provide solutions to challenges that experience and intuition alone had been unable to address. Her methodical approach had proven to be an essential complement to established rescue procedures rather than an alternative to proven techniques. The rescued climbers were transported to regional medical facilities for comprehensive evaluation and treatment, with initial assessments indicating that they would recover fully from their mountain ordeal. The successful outcome validated the risks and efforts that had been invested in the rescue operation, confirming that Elena's leadership and the team's technical capabilities had prevented what could have been a tragic outcome. Technical specialist Rodriguez approached Elena during the post-operation equipment recovery, his expression reflecting respect that had been absent during previous interactions. "Ma'am, I wanted to say that your route analysis and weather monitoring made the critical difference in this operation. Without your preparation and technical knowledge, we would not have been able to reach those climbers under these conditions." The acknowledgement was sincere and professionally significant, representing recognition from experienced rescue personnel who understood the technical challenges and operational requirements that had made the rescue successful. Elena's methodical preparation and detailed analysis had earned respect from colleagues who had previously viewed her contributions as valuable but peripheral to core rescue activities. Lieutenant Chen coordinated the operational debriefing that would document lessons learned and procedural innovations that could inform future rescue training and planning. The alternative approach techniques and leadership procedures that Elena had developed during the operation represented valuable additions to established rescue protocols, innovations that could improve operational capabilities for future emergency situations. Elena participated in the debriefing discussions with the same systematic thoroughness that had characterized her preparation and operational leadership, providing detailed analysis of procedures and recommendations for incorporating alternative approach techniques into standard rescue training programs. Her contributions extended beyond successful completion of a single rescue operation to improvements in organizational capabilities and operational procedures. The debriefing revealed the extent to which Elena's performance had challenged assumptions about technical expertise and operational leadership in mountain rescue operations. Her success had demonstrated that detailed preparation and systematic analysis could enable personnel with limited field experience to provide effective leadership under emergency conditions when their knowledge addressed critical operational requirements. Colonel Patricia Hayes arrived at base camp that evening to personally review the rescue operation and assess organizational implications of the innovative procedures that had made the successful outcome possible. Her presence indicated that Elena's performance had attracted attention at senior command levels and that the rescue operation would influence policy and training decisions beyond the immediate organizational level. "Martinez," Colonel Hayes said, after reviewing operational reports and debriefing summaries, "your performance today represents the kind of innovative thinking and technical excellence that we need to incorporate into our standard training and operational procedures. I am recommending you for promotion to Senior Rescue Specialist with additional responsibilities for technical training and operational procedure development." The promotion represented formal recognition of Elena's contributions and capabilities, but it also indicated that her methodical approach and technical expertise would be integrated into organizational training and operational planning. Her success had demonstrated that different approaches to rescue operations could provide valuable capabilities that complemented rather than replaced established procedures and experienced personnel. The transformation extended beyond individual recognition to organizational changes that would affect future rescue operations and training programs. Elena's alternative approach techniques and weather analysis procedures would be incorporated into standard training curricula, ensuring that future rescue personnel would have access to the technical knowledge and systematic preparation methods that had made her successful. Technical specialist Rodriguez was assigned to work with Elena in developing training programs that would teach alternative approach techniques and technical analysis methods to rescue personnel throughout the organization. The collaboration represented recognition that Elena's methodical approach and Rodriguez's field experience could combine to create comprehensive training programs that prepared rescue personnel for a wider range of emergency situations. Lieutenant Chen was promoted to operations coordinator with responsibility for integrating innovative rescue techniques into established operational procedures. Her partnership with Elena during the rescue operation had demonstrated the effectiveness of combining technical analysis with operational experience, and her new position would enable her to apply those lessons to future rescue planning and training initiatives. Elena's weather monitoring and analysis procedures were adopted as standard protocols for all major rescue operations, ensuring that future missions would benefit from the kind of detailed atmospheric monitoring that had made her alternative approach successful. Her technical expertise was recognized as an essential capability rather than supplementary support, changing how the organization approached weather analysis and route planning. The rescue operation had demonstrated that Elena Martinez possessed not only technical knowledge and analytical capabilities, but also the leadership skills and practical judgment necessary for successful emergency operations under challenging conditions. Her transformation from overlooked support specialist to recognized operational leader represented validation of preparation and systematic thinking that had seemed excessive to colleagues who preferred intuitive approaches and established procedures. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of a packed training facility addressing rescue personnel from multiple organizations who had gathered for advanced technical rescue training. Her presentation covered alternative approach techniques, weather analysis procedures, and systematic preparation methods that had proven successful in challenging rescue operations. The audience listened with professional attention that reflected recognition of her expertise and operational achievements. The training program she had developed combined theoretical analysis with practical field exercises, ensuring that rescue personnel developed both technical knowledge and operational capabilities necessary for complex emergency situations. Her methodical approach had been integrated with established rescue procedures to create comprehensive training that prepared personnel for a wider range of challenges and conditions. Today we will be practicing alternative approach techniques for technical rescues under adverse weather conditions, she announced, her voice carrying the confidence that came from proven expertise and successful operational leadership. These procedures combine detailed preparation with adaptive decision-making to provide solutions when standard approaches are not viable. The transformation was complete. Elena Martinez had evolved from the quiet support specialist who provided weather reports and equipment monitoring to the recognized expert whose technical knowledge and leadership abilities were sought by rescue organizations throughout the region. Her methodical preparation and systematic approach had proven to be essential capabilities rather than excessive caution. Her success had demonstrated that excellence in emergency operations could emerge from detailed preparation and analytical thinking, as well as from field experience and intuitive decision-making. The organization had learned to value different approaches to rescue operations, recognizing that diverse capabilities and complementary skills created stronger teams and more effective operational procedures. The 3 climbers she had rescued sent periodic updates on their recovery and returned to mountaineering activities within months of their rescue. Their survival represented the ultimate validation of Elena's approach and the rescue team's capabilities, confirming that innovative thinking and systematic preparation could achieve results that seemed impossible under conventional approaches. Elena continued developing advanced rescue techniques and training programs, her expertise recognized throughout the emergency response community as representing innovative approaches to technical rescue operations. Her weather analysis procedures and alternative route planning methods were adopted by rescue organizations facing similar challenges in mountainous terrain and adverse weather conditions. The quiet support specialist, who had spent years being overlooked and underestimated, had become the technical expert whose knowledge and leadership abilities were essential for the most challenging rescue operations. Her transformation demonstrated that preparation and systematic thinking could triumph over conventional wisdom when knowledge met opportunity under emergency conditions. The northwestern drainage route that Elena had identified became a standard alternative approach for rescue operations when weather conditions made helicopter operations impossible. Her route analysis and weather monitoring procedures were incorporated into emergency response protocols, ensuring that future rescue teams would have access to the technical knowledge that had made her successful. Elena Martinez had found her place in a profession that initially seemed designed for people different from herself. Her methodical preparation and analytical approach had proven to be strengths rather than limitations, essential capabilities that enabled success when conventional approaches failed. She had learned that belonging was not about becoming like everyone else, but about finding situations where unique strengths were valued and needed. The rescue operation had taught her that technical expertise and detailed preparation could provide solutions to challenges that experience alone could not address. But it had also demonstrated that successful leadership required combining analytical thinking with practical judgment and adaptive decision-making. Her growth as a leader had emerged from real-time operational experience that tested and validated her theoretical knowledge. Most importantly, Elena had proven that different approaches to emergency operations were not only viable, but essential for addressing the full range of challenges that rescue teams encountered. Her success had encouraged organizational changes that created opportunities for diverse capabilities and complementary skills, improving operational effectiveness for everyone. The mountains remained dangerous and unpredictable, but Elena Martinez had demonstrated that systematic preparation and analytical thinking could provide reliable methods for addressing even the most challenging emergency situations. Her quiet confidence and methodical approach had saved lives and changed organizational culture, proving that sometimes the most valuable contributions came from the people who did their homework, while others relied on instinct and experience. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.